I've always been really obsessed with archives and vintage clothes in my personal wardrobe, but also in my work. I just remember my grandmother always turning garments inside out to study the construction, the details that made me fall in love with fashion, not just from the outside, but also from the inside. When I came to London, I was quite young, and I was really inspired by the clash of cultures that I saw here that's so different to where I grew up. The color, the texture, the sound, the smell, everything being so amplified. Whereas where I grew up is a bit more subtle and muted. But the longer I spent in London, I also realized that my culture, both in the fashion and the architecture and the furniture, which I love, it's really about construction and it's about the details. It might look simple, but it can be quite a complex construction, and I suppose that is what really inspires me today. It's the very fine nuances rather than the loud and very visible. I did an incredible project some years back with Jürgen Teller and Irvin Worm. Irvin is someone I've always been inspired by because he manages to take these objects and scenarios of everyday life and turn them on its head. So there's still something incredibly familiar about it, but still so odd. Another project was More or Less magazine. I had this idea to approach London-based designers in making a garment out of anything available in their studio. Jamie Perlman, who runs More or Less, we were approaching all the designers, PRs, trying to make them understand the challenge. In the end, it was a portfolio of really incredible people who supported it, like Simon Rocha, Connor Ives when he had just started his brand, and obviously that's the foundation for him. Dilara made a dress out of toiles in her studio, which was incredible. I still remember the construction. Last year I did a trip to Morocco with Ilyas Grieb for Dazed. The theme of the issue was breaking borders, so we had this idea of traveling through the Moroccan desert with these nomadic communities that set up souks in the middle of nowhere to explore the texture and color of another culture, which is Ilyas, not mine, through his lens was an eye-opening experience. The way that everything is recycled and reused. Ultimately, it was published a couple of weeks before the earthquake, so that was quite an emotional experience too. When I first started working on my book, Collecting Fashion, I was really interested in the notion of time, because time is so essential in the relationships a lot of these people have built with the clothes. The time it took to find the pieces, to complete this dream and fantasy that maybe you've lived with for years or decades until you come across that one particular shoe or an accessory that completes the look. But also, time is so essential in understanding what came before, what inspires us today. And time is what we have very little of today when we work on collections, either as stylists or as designers. My process with the book first started when I was introduced to Adrian, who today is the design director at Moschino, through our mutual friend Angelo Flacavento. Angelo later became my guardian angel in the process of making a book and was like, have you ever seen Adrian's archive? We should do a story about it. And he just took me through rooms and rooms of the most incredible collection of Comme and Junya and Margiela I've ever seen. It really opened my eyes into the psychology of someone who has been collecting for most of their life and accumulated all of these incredible pieces to complete a fantasy and a dream rather than to show other people. I think my generation consumes clothes with such a speed that we're not even given time to fall in love with something anymore. And I suppose that's why meeting so many people that really developed this deep love for a designer, a collection, an idea that just would not leave them and that they would keep pursuing and hunting down until the look or the collection of those garments was complete was such an eye-opening experience for me. clothes should be a part of your memories. You know, you find a coat or a jacket that you wore in a certain moment of your life and it brings back the memory. I was really curious about the stories that a lot of these people's wardrobes would carry. Like Alex Fury going through his fashion magazines, living in a small town up north, and completing that fantasy once you then one day come across that dress that Linda Evangelista was wearing on the runway in '97. That was really important for me, was not just showing the clothes, but also the stories that these pieces carry and the memories that the people who collect them have around them. This is Alex Fury's archive, which I photographed together with Caroline Jacobs and Guinevere. It was like a really amazing team effort. We decided to photograph the pieces as well flat because I wanted to reveal the construction of some of them. This is one of my favorite examples actually. It's a silk organza jacket that's lined with aluminium foil by John Galliano in 1992. Tracking down the people that are in the pages of the book was quite a challenge. Someone would mention a name in passing and you would Google that person and try to ask around. That was how I actually got introduced to Vicky. I asked Angelo about her and he then was like, you know, I shared a taxi ride with Vicky like 20 years ago from Antwerp to Paris. See if this number still works for her. And I tried call the number, no luck. And then one day I get a call from a number I don't know, and it's Vicky, who was, I think, employer number 3 at Margiela, and who has 99 tabby boots and Margiela pieces I've never even seen in real life before until I met her. A lot of them, like Michelle Lamy, wears these Comme pieces out every day, you know, like it's a tracksuit. Zaha Hadid's shoes, which Hans-Ulrich Obrist introduced me to, took about a year to get access to photograph them, and Hans was more persistent than anyone. And without that sort of collective collaboration, this book could never have happened. Photographing Zaha Hadid's shoes was one of the highlights of the book because it was really like entering into this sacred place where no one had been before. There was something so incredible about unpacking the shoes that carried someone through their life whilst they're no longer here. It felt like quite a privilege. I think what's so interesting about archive fashion now is that the value of these pieces has increased so much just in the past couple of years, from it being a niche practice to becoming a very, very big part of our industry, because I think also when you talk about heritage and brand history, it's something that no one else can take ownership of. It just belongs to you. And I think that's why the value of it has become so much more important within the industry, and it has such a big presence now because it's original.